Innovation Exchange. We have a great event tonight. My name's Steve O'Bonnell. I'm part of the Applied Innovation Exchange team here in San Francisco. And how many of you have been here, are here for the first time? All right, quite a few, so good. Let me just tell you a little bit about the AIE and why we built it. But first, you're here. This is actually, we're part of Capgemini. We're a 200,000 person global consultancy. Really focused, probably we spent the last 50 years really helping companies really build those core technology foundations to help their companies grow. But what we realized, even as us as a company, as a consultancy, that the pace of innovation was changing dramatically, right? The impact that was taking place was something that we hadn't seen before, and so we realized we as a company had to start transforming. And so we looked at saying, how do we start applying innovation in a meaningful way? And so we invested in what we call the Applied Innovation Exchange. So we have 12 of these globally. San Francisco is our flagship. We just opened Stockholm last week. We have a lot in Europe, Paris, London, Utrecht, Munich, all over, Mumbai. We have quite a few globally. We're looking at South America as the next area. But really, I think the goal was, how do we start thinking about applying this innovation in a meaningful way? How do you curate against this incredible velocity of change, right, and helping these companies grow, and do it not only once, but in a sustainable fashion, right? And so we took this, I'd say, this asset for us, and we looked at saying, okay, now we're going to look at not only innovation from maybe art of the possible, but how do we start applying innovation strategy, UX design into that? So we've actually invested in over a couple $1 billion in companies, bringing into our, what we call shift left. How do we start really thinking about not only technology and how you apply it, but how do you actually start thinking about why are we doing it? Here, what we try to focus on is not necessarily the technology, but on the problem statements. What are we trying to address? David's going to be here talking about blockchain, but really, as much as it is about blockchain, it's actually about the surface area in which we can impact, right? And so he's going to talk a lot about how are we applying this technology in a meaningful way. And so just a little bit about how we actually engaged Pete here. We engaged Pete as a partner with reInvent because we wanted to have a different impact on this environment. We wanted to really engage different constituencies in our environment, not just global corporates that we typically have here at our company, but really getting people like you to really bring new ideas and exchange those ideas with us, challenge those problems, right? Those problem statements that we're going after. Typical day here, in fact, today we had two global auto companies, or auto industry companies here, really thinking about how do you apply data, right, more meaningfully? How do you start changing from a products to maybe a services-based company? And how is connectivity going to change the world? So in any case, we do this every day pretty much in here, really thinking about what problems are people facing in what we call Horizon 2, maybe Horizon 3, and how can they really start changing where companies are going. So with that, just want to introduce you, give you a little bit of a flavor of what we do here at the IE, and introduce Pete. So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Capgemini. And thanks for opening this space up. Thanks for making this kind of series happen over the last, now we're in our third year. It's really, they've been so generous, you could say, far-sighted. And their largesse has now spread to New York. In fact, I just got back from New York. We had a Tuesday meeting there, What's Now New York. Building a nascent network out there. We're six events in. I will tell you, they're not as cool as you folks. I'll just say that much. But we're bringing a little bit of San Francisco to New York, and actually hoping to build it out that way as well. So anyhow, I'm Pete Leiden. I'm the founder of reInvent. reInvent's a media company, and what we really focus on is trying to find remarkable innovators who are really trying to solve big challenges and really find better ways forward. industries, for what's going on in the world, what's going on in America and the world. And this series is really a great example of what we actually do, of finding these kind of characters. Each month we've been finding someone in a different field who's doing something really interesting that we could talk to people outside that field and can also talk about what they're grappling with right now. And in fact, just to tell you the kind of caliber of folks we got here, I think tonight we're supposed to have 3 of our past speakers are even showing up here. We got Sunil Paul, who's going to be coming here. I think he's here from, he's the guy who did autonomous vehicles, the Sidecar founder, who basically was talking to us and walking us through that. We've actually got Brian Behlendorf here, who a year ago walked us through the early technology, the early technology of what's really going on in blockchain, and we're going to call into him later. And we got Johnny Dyer here, who a couple months ago was actually helping us explain. He's from Google now, and he's explaining what the heck is going on with all the space entrepreneurs. So we always, all this new wave of space. So every month, something different. Some of these folks kind of coming out to that. Now, the other piece about this series, which is interesting, is it's everybody in the net who comes to these. It's an invite-only gathering. And one of the great pleasures for me is every month to look at who's RSVP'd and where they're coming from. And we've actually, there's folks who are kind of from big companies, there's startups, there's CEOs, there's founders, there's executive directors, there's people in government, there's people in nonprofits, there's just artists, there's activists. It's just a crazy cross-fertilization of people from different fields. And that's by design, because over the time of this series, we're going to all these different fields and bringing together all these networks. We also ask the speakers to always bring folks that they want to be talking to in this kind of lead audience. And so over time, and that's in fact what David's done today, we've got a lot of folks from his network cross-fertilizing with this broader cross-disciplinary network. So it's great here. Now, we're also a media company. And one of the things we thought is this is an elite kind of invite-only space. There's only so much space in here. But we said, why keep this behind closed doors? So we basically are live streaming this now. It is a kind of 3-camera shoot. It's going out live now. We edit it. We do highlights. We do shorter pieces. We get it onto medium pieces. We do social media. And in fact, for those that want to know it, if you are going to do anything in social media, use that hashtag and you can get them to the live stream there at our site. It's right off the front. Boom, you can get to it and spread the word and push this out. Spread the word and push it out there now. You're also all going to be on. So as we have this conversation, just remember that this isn't behind closed doors. Now, tonight, which is actually something, because a lot of times these conversations get quite interesting into strategy. So we are going to blockchain back today. This is the only subject we have returned to, and now we're in our 3rd year of this. And a year ago, as I mentioned, Brian Behlendorf, who is the executive director of the Hyperledger project, which is from the Linux Foundation, and Brian was a kind of early visionary in the early web on the Apache server project, and he's kind of doing something very similar in the blockchain space. He helped lay out a year ago the beginnings of really what are the big tech challenges that the space faced, but also what would possibly be these implications of where this could go. What we decided, because in a year in internet time or tech time is so long ago, and because this space has been so kind of fast-moving and explosive, we decided to revisit it this time, but to think about it more with a finance lens, like follow the money, to really understand how many of those kind of things that we were talking about a year ago are now turning into actually concrete projects, concrete businesses, and actually starting to actually take shape in a really very real way. And to do that, we thought, who would be good for that? And that's where we actually got in touch with David Ellington. Now, David is a really terrific person to walk us through this conversation with you tonight. David cut his teeth in the first big tech boom in the 90s. He was the CEO of NetNoir, which was a kind of early portal. And so he kind of knows that scene. He's actually is a founder of his own kind of big data analytics company called GridSpeak. So he kind of gets the founder space. He also knows a lot about high finance. He was essentially a trustee and a commissioner in the San Francisco employees system of kind of basically a pension fund of about $20 billion when he was managing it or helping manage it. That was really trying to how to actually grow money. And so but what he's done recently, just starting last January, is he founded a thing called the Silicon Valley Blockchain Society. And in effect, it's like a network of folks that are trying to figure out how to fund the revolution, is kind of their motto. And what he's been doing is gathering people with money, people who represent money, and who kind of want to connect to people that are actually doing the actual blockchain, in fact, starting these companies. And they have a similar kind of network to this one that's kind of going in parallel around the money space. Now, he's doing more than that, and we're going to have him explain that in a second here as he comes out to explain what he's trying to do. But what's interesting about this group is it's just mushrooming. They're now actually getting satellite spaces, they're little networks all over they've got New York, they've got LA, they've been in Europe now, they've got one in Rome, they're in Asia, they've got Tokyo going, and it's, again, these collections of people who are trying to track the money and move the money to actually move this whole blockchain thing forward. And so what he's going to do is he's going to come out here, give a little bit of an opening of what he's doing, just to give you a sense of where he's coming from and what he knows. I'm going to come out here and have a little bit of an interview to draw more out of him, and then we're going to move into this conversation with all you. There are some amazing folks doing amazing stuff with blockchain here, and we're going to call them out. We're going to call a few of them out just to actually give a little bit of sense of what's going on. And, of course, we're going to open it up to all of you. So with that, I think let's get David to come up. Come on, let's give him a big hand. David.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it. Welcome. How many people have been to a blockchain-related event anywhere? Good number. There's one every 10 minutes, so it's awesome. The Silicon Valley Blockchain Society, it wasn't in January. It actually started this last July. And it's all right. I'm going to tell you a little story. It's simple. So last year, the early part of the year, my business wasn't doing so well. I had a database, kind of a tools business in big data, predictive analytics, and the year before it was doing great. We had developed some tools to trade electricity, and specifically the price of a megawatt. And in fact, we had gotten returns where we were up 39x in 2016. Phenomenal. Well, as you can imagine, electricity is in fact heavily regulated. And unfortunately, the regulator decided to make some changes in the rules. Local organization here called CAISO in the state of California, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. Well, we went from, let's say, one day we were trading and made about $150,000, then we got an invoice from CAISO for about $210,000. So clearly that wasn't a great business model, so we had to adjust. Well, I was the co-founder of the company, and my partner was like, okay, well, you're supposed to focus on the money and the business, and I focus on building the technology, so let's figure out what we're going to do. So the first part of 2017, I was like pulling out what little hair I had, and trying to figure out what was I going to do. And one of the things that happened was I was invited to a wedding in New York City. And this wedding was by a friend who is a very successful entrepreneur. And to give you an idea, he was marrying the former Miss Singapore. So it was a really high-end, very wonderful wedding. He was at the Plaza Hotel in New York City. And I flew, I was like, what am I going to do? So let me just go out there, kind of clear my head. And I did. And at this wedding, of course, during the reception, I was seeing friends I hadn't seen for many years. And what everyone was talking about at this wedding in of June of last year was either cannabis or cryptocurrency. So obviously there were a lot of Californians at this wedding. So I decided a long time ago, for a variety of reasons, I wasn't going to get into cannabis. But this cryptocurrency thing, I didn't know what the heck that was. I didn't even understand really what they were talking about. So I came back and met with some friends here at a local club and decided, does anybody know anything about cryptocurrency, this thing, blockchain, what is that? And no one did. So we said, okay, one of our friends has a very nice house. I said, do you mind if we borrow your house, and a bunch of us are going to come, sit down, and actually just try to figure this out. So we went by this guy's house. There were 7 of us, and that was last July. That's the July. Needless to say, none of us knew anything about it. So we said, okay, a month from now, we're going to come back together, and we're going to figure this out. We're going to watch YouTube videos, do whatever you got to do. Well, came back 1 month later, and about 17 people were in the room. People brought other people. Then September, we decided to do again, and then there were about 30-something people. Then 50 or 60-something people in this person's living room. Now we have we're touching about 500 people globally. We're launching chapters. We've launched in LA, New York, London is coming. Benelux, I think the head of the Benelux chapter is here, is visiting. Benelux being Brussels, Amsterdam, and Luxembourg. Hong Kong, Tokyo, Seoul, these are the places that we're looking and developing now, different relationships, Moscow, a bunch of these places. Why? Not because of me, not because of this thing called Silicon Valley Blockchain Society, it's because of the blockchain and this revolution. So we've been able to leverage this to a point. Now, I decided that I should focus on what I know best. So yes, I've been an internet entrepreneur, I've been very fortunate, had a company. First I was an entertainment lawyer in LA a number of years ago, we don't have to talk about that, but the internet part, I was here in South Park in 1995, January of 95. So it was one of the first companies a couple of blocks from here. So Internet 1.0, I'm an old guy. Actually ran that company, sold it in 2001, and then I got into public service. Public service being on the board, some of you know locally, I was on the board of the Commonwealth Club, SF Jazz, and a couple other things. Local museum, Museum of African Diaspora, a couple of things. But then I got asked by then Mayor Willie Brown, and I won't use the language that he characterized this opportunity to me, but just say he wanted my derriere to be on this certain seat in the city. So first I was a commissioner here at the Telecommunications Commission, but then after doing that for 5 years, he said, I want you to be on the pension fund because you've been been dealing with these venture capitalists and you've been an entrepreneur. So he appointed me to the San Francisco Pension Fund. Turned out to be $20 billion, not a bad seat. Ended up becoming chairman of the board, chairman of the investment committee, and chairman of the governance committee. So I got heavily involved with different ways to actually invest capital. So when this blockchain thing came along, I was like, let me figure out where I can fit in. So I've decided that I'm going to focus on institutional investors, corporations, and government, and trying to help them transition into what I believe is this next revolution. I was Internet 1.0, well, I think this is 3.0. And I'm very, very, very excited about it, and it's been going exceptionally well. And there's a variety of reasons why I'm excited about it, and we'll talk about that. And the value is centered around the word trust. So, and specifically, automated trust. But to understand the business, I've been asked to explain what Silicon Valley Blockchain Society is. So, this is the business. The first part is what we're kind of known for and what we're talking about. The Silicon Valley Blockchain Society is where we focus on our network, and that's our community, that's our sites and actual chapters around the world. In less than, to show you how amazing this ride has been so far, it's been about 10 months, and we have about $1.5 trillion in assets under management, represented by a membership. We're looking at about 20 global chapters, but I can see we have interest from a variety of others. But we'll see what happens. I have a goal of at least 20. We'll see what happens after that. But fundamentally, I kind of call that the Davos piece of our business. This is where we actually network, meet. This is invite only, overwhelmingly institutional investors. I say about 2/3, I'm trying to do about 2/3 institutional investors, actual investors, but a solid third impact folks, academics, researchers, developers, so people can actually critique the projects that are presented to us, and that kind of cross-section of folks. So I'm trying to actually, it's a salon-type environment, and we curate it aggressively. That's the Davos piece. The second piece is kind of what we call the Bloomberg piece. That's the 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. We have a trading platform. We have IP. It's those tools I talked about before. Well, guess what I pivoted them into? And that is from trading the price of a megawatt to trading cryptocurrency. Why? Massive volatility, incredible spreads. In price of a megawatt can go from negative $40 in one 15-minute interval to plus $1,500 in the next 15-minute interval. Sound familiar? Okay. So those tools will be rolling out in the next couple of, next couple of weeks. But with those tools, we're looking at, we have members, so we actually people have asked us to advise them on some investments and whatnot. So we're developing a broker-dealer. We're not sure yet if we should buy one or if we should partner. We're working on that. We'll figure that out, but both opportunities are presented. And then finally, all the data that we're gathering from research and market intelligence, Our intent is to actually package that and sell that to hedge funds and a host of others who people who are interested in participating. Now, our tools, by the way, are both enterprise and retail. So enterprise, yes, if you have 500 actual traders working for you, you can track them all, manage their allocations, do all that. And if you're a retailer, if you're someone who's sitting at your dining room table and you want to trade, you can also use our tools. That's the Bloomberg. So Davos meets Bloomberg. The third piece would be actually the advisory. I've recently been granted the honor of being appointed or asked to be a part of the Technology Advisory Board of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National League of Cities. So there's a whole role for working with government. Obviously, I like where business and government intersect. My career's been that way. So I love the private sector, but I also like helping shape policy. And what has happened is a whole bunch of folks have been coming up to me and asking me, David, what can we do? I want to do this kind of project. I want to, fix that or pay bills and do it. Okay, fine. So we decided we were going to launch a McKinsey part of our business. Now, that is the government part. The corporate part is obviously there's a host of corporations out there that are even members of our organization that are asking us to help work with their clients and their customers. And we've had, I think, several Fortune 50 companies that are already members of the organization, and they are asking us to help them navigate the blockchain space. So we've launched SVS Blockchain Advisory. Therefore, it is Davos meets Bloomberg meets McKinsey. And then the final piece, which is kind of, to be very honest, my favorite piece of the business, which is my real credential. Yes, I run the network. Basically, I just opened my Rolodex. Because I was chairman of this pension fund. When you're sitting on a lot of money, everyone wants to talk to you. So I kept everybody's name. It's not me, it was the money. So I'm clear on that. Yeah, really. So the bottom line is, though, I kept in touch with folks over the years. So when I said I was doing blockchain, they were like, David, what are you doing? Whether that was I've lived in Tokyo, I've lived in Hong Kong, I've spent a lot of time in Singapore, I've lived in London, Paris, a couple places. So basically, how do I bring all that together? So I'm the one who's basically launched the network, and now it is kind of multiplied and gone on. It's got its life of its unto itself. But the last piece is SVS Capital. That is basically we're launching a fund of funds. That's what a pension fund is. We just pick managers, right? So that's my expertise. And actually, he didn't make it here tonight, but the former chief investment officer of the San Francisco pension fund, and when he left San Francisco, the $20 billion San Francisco venture pension fund, he went to LaSera, which is the Los Angeles County pension fund, and that's about $50 billion as the chief investment officer. He is helping us develop that piece there, so we have actually worked together in the past. I'm really kind of excited about that. And there is no institutional product out there, right? There's no product for large institutions globally to be able to get in this space. How do you, because they all want to learn, but they're terrified, absolutely terrified. Well, we plan and have already started kind of helping them navigate that piece. So that I call the Blackstone piece. So Davos meets Bloomberg, meets McKinsey, meets Blackstone, and then people kind of get it. Very excited. It's been a ride like none other, but then you all know that. There's a lot of pieces to this revolution, and I want to talk about that in a few minutes because that's actually more important, okay? I'm actually going to make this go away because that's not so important. To me, what's important is this revolution and why it's important and what it can lead to. So, Peter.
Fantastic. Thank you. You can see why I didn't want to explain what the Silicon Valley Blockchain Society was, and I wanted him to basically do that. But also, I think it actually helps you to understand this conversation differently. Because a year ago, it's basically almost to the day, a year ago, we're here with Brian Behlendorf, when, as much as everyone's raised their hands about blockchain, a year ago, honestly, it was much more nascent understanding. People didn't really get what was going on. And Brian, who was really on the forefront of that kind of thinking and was this uber techie, was really kind of roughing it out and starting to kind of talk about these things in very kind of spacey and kind of speculative terms, let's say. And what's interesting now is here you are, we're talking about this kind of real businesses and all the kind of money that's starting to flow and the kind of need and the anxiety, what everyone's trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. We got a lot of folks here who know a lot too. So, well, let's just lay it out to make sure everybody's on the same page, because I know there are some people, as much as everyone kind of thinks they know it, when you distill for all the folks that you're starting to wrap their heads around it, how do you explain it? Just give your basics on the blockchain and basically kind of its significance to you. I mean, so that people, where do you fall in kind of not just explaining it, but also how important is this revolution?
A couple of things. One, I say, first of all, I'm not an engineer, like most of the people in the room. So relax. No one's asking you to write code. Get over it. Understand the basic concepts. I mean, do you really know how your television works or your computer? But you use them. So that's number one. Number two, what I try to say, well, I start out by saying, one, as I told my mother, who's 90 at the time, Ma, there's this thing called the internet, and it, you saw how my first business, how I got, yeah, I know that, okay. So it revolutionized the way humans communicate and transact. Then that digital platform created a way for trillions of dollars in value to be created purely on that new digital platform. Netflix, Google, Facebook, whatever. It is a natural evolution and progression for there to be a digital currency. Why wouldn't there also be a new way to do, why does it have to be a dollar or a yen or a euro in this new, it's a natural evolution for this new medium, in my mind. So then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, there should be, and that's what, in my mind, on its face, is what a Bitcoin represents.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about all the other cryptocurrencies in a minute. That's the hype, that's the sexy part of the protocol. Everyone's talking about cryptocurrencies. But then, blockchain. Blockchain is, for me, in a way, a dream come true. I have lost faith in humanity's ability to solve its problems, its fundamental problems of getting along. So I looked to innovation and technology. What I did in 1.0 was I believed in, I drank the Kool-Aid. I thought, we were going to solve the world's problems, and everyone's going to be able to vote and be educated and fairness and all that. And no, Wall Street came and took it. And I participated in that, and I understand that. But none of us knew what it was doing, where it was going. Okay, now we do. And what blockchain represents to me is automated trust. Finally, that distributed ledger, that smart contract, will enable, finally, for trust to be baked in. And if that's the foundation of our future society, there's nothing else I want to be a part of.
So the automated trust, distributed ledger, automated trust. Now, so your cryptocurrency, the way you put that in context.
That's one protocol on the blockchain. Yes.
And to what extent do you see that as distinct from the other applications of blockchain, which we're going to start talking about here? Do you see that as a sideshow? Do you see it as an on-ramp to it? We have to go through
cryptocurrencies?
yeah.
I'm glad you asked that. It's big.
Okay.
It's the reinvention of money. So, and sometimes I don't, we're going to be here for a while, so yes, I have to give it its due. It is unbelievably revolutionary. And that's why you have, has any of us seen this many countries around the planet talking about the same, trying to figure out their regulations? When do they ever move that quickly before? Because we're talking about fundamentally taking money away from a government, its ability to control or impact that money, their currency, with something else that they have no control over, and you can do whatever you want to do with it. So yes, it's profound and important. But the other uses of the blockchain, for me, are just as profound, especially in healthcare, especially in identity. I mean, look at, for example, a refugee situation. Can you imagine if Syrian refugees or Rohingya in Myanmar or any place around the world could actually be able, on their phone, to carry currency something of value that they can unleash somewhere else, that their identity is there, that maybe the longitude and latitude of their property back wherever they were is still intact there and it's been acknowledged and recognized. So when when the war stops, they can go back home and build a life again. Those are the kinds of things, their health records, these are the kinds of things that can be secure and verified on a blockchain. And that to me is an exciting future.
So we're kind of jumping ahead to this impact stuff. So let's go a little bit slower here.
It's not impact.
Okay.
That's life.
Okay.
Impact is another process, but I understand what you're saying, but I think it's important, the revolution, in my mind, of what's taking place on every aspect of society. But yes, people are, with the sexy protocol is cryptocurrency, because we're talking about money and possible wealth creation quickly, and that's why people are leaning in on that.
Okay, so I'm just trying to walk people through it. Now, there's people here who this is totally get it at this level, but we're doing this to an audience and other folks that might not totally get it. So talk about getting rid of the middlemen, the kind of the disruptive power of if you did have a functioning blockchain system up and running. That
my former profession.
Yeah, talk about
the law profession, the legal profession.
Well, exactly. So talk about a little bit about how you see that kind of.
Now I don't know how much society is going to reject, or really be upset about the loss of lawyers. It's a horrifying thought. I know. Thank you. But we're talking about a significant chunk, real estate, definitely any area of the financial services, accounting, auditing. Literally, think of the jobs, think of the folks and the careers that are out there, that those careers are going away. A lot of us are not, we're not, and it's not to be dismissed. That's another whole discussion about what had the impact on society and that transition, how fast that's going to happen. Automation in general. The impact, we haven't even, of course we can talk about AI and then AR and VR, and where I think all this is ultimately where nobody knows where it's going, but that's ultimately where it's all going to converge. But yeah, the middleman is gone in a significant way, and because of smart contracts in particular, and the ability of that chain for those folks who are in that chain and part of that chain to have visibility into what has taken place and what was supposed to happen. The funds don't get released unless the goods are delivered at that time, at this place, and if that didn't happen, the chain says no. So it kind of motivates folks, and therefore, hence, the concept of an automated trust system being introduced.
So just walk someone through, just who's not totally wrapping their head around that, exactly how that. So what essentially we have a technological infrastructure that allows much of the transactional costs that used to be handled by human being middlemen.
All those fees, costs, and commissions, especially
that is
transferring
essentially
money.
able to be done much more efficiently, much more cost effectively, with no real reason for that human being to actually be doing a lot of that. Is that
essentially, it's almost machine to machine, right? Even if it's your device to someone else's device, it's peer to peer, right? It's just you giving me money and I'm giving you money. We didn't have to go through the bank to do that. And that's the dream, that's the goal, the freedom. But then also, does the government know that took place? The implications are massive and really varied. But the point is that ultimately it's cutting out middlemen. There's no tracking necessarily. It can be anonymous. It depends on the type of technology that you're using, the type of chain that you're using. And that's another whole discussion. But yes, ultimately middlemen are just not needed. They're certain for basic transactions.
Okay, so I'm touching on a bunch of things here that we're going to open to everybody here in a little bit here. And so let's just talk a little bit about the investment environment. When we talked before, just the amount of money, the interest of people with money, the funds that are starting to get tuned into this. You're kind of a money guy. Just describe to me how you're seeing the financial environment right now around blockchain, and maybe even with an environment that people understood, which was the dot-com boom, kind of late 90s kind of thing. Is there, talk a little bit about what you're seeing now, and if there's any kind of historical analogies in your mind of what's happening.
The historical analogies are the crazy parties and the expensive receptions and over-the-top events. That nonsense is back to a degree. What is interesting, though, this is decentralized, right? So people who are not in the industry, you had to be in the internet industry to participate in all that and see it up close and be invited to those parties or have a company that was funded and was doing something. Here it's a little different, right? People are making money trading crypto. They can be in Des Moines, they can be wherever, and they're spending their money and figuring out how to get liquidity for that token that they have, and then they're using that to go spend and buy stuff and do whatever. So it is a little, it's similar but different in that sense. It's a lot more distributed, people participating in the upside, the immediate current upside of what's been happening, that's been generated by this industry.
With the coins. But what about, let's say, VC money or investment money, startup money going into startups? Can you describe the size of that? The kind of
size.
It's starting to move in a big way.
What's happening is, remember, most venture funds, you raise money from large institutions, you can't just invest in anything. You gave that institutional investor, that LP, that limited partner, a thesis on what you were going to invest in. None of them had, cryptocurrencies or blockchain in their thesis. So what you have is now a lot of partners at venture funds using their private money and pooling the partners' money, and they're the ones that's been the first wave. Now, currently, we just heard this week that Andreessen Horowitz is about to launch a crypto fund. There are more and more of mainstream VCs going to do that, but not many yet. There's still, because a lot of them have been made a ton, I know people who've made a ton of money, and they're not necessarily willing or have any interest in starting a fund and having to report to an LP and, and all that. No, just want me and the partners here invest and make some money. I see a lot of that going on, and that's being real. So let's see, I think more and more funds are coming, but that's part of the reason why we want to launch our fund of funds, because there are plenty of also crypto hedge funds out there where people have pulled together their money, really made some money in the recent run-up, and now they're, starting to look at taking other people's money, but they're also trading and making activity happen. So which is separate from what you were asking about, which is institutional money, which is venture money or private equity or whatever.
Well, that, or I'm just trying to understand, is the money going to, is there a lot of money moving now to startups that are really working on blockchain, not necessarily just the crypto stuff, but the blockchain kind of businesses really starting to do?
Is there a lot of money?
Or how would you quantify that in any way?
There is money, and there are tens of millions of dollars being moved around, hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's not as big as what was going on with the internet business. Many people are doing just that. They're doing an ICO. And some of them, especially, they're up until probably the end of last year, people could put together, this pad you have, you and I could sit here and come up with a quote-unquote white paper and put it out there, and if you do enough marketing and create a Telegram channel and get enough 10, 15, 20,000 people to join that and talk about whatever you want them to talk about, and then do your ICO, and somebody will wire some money to you. That's how crazy it's been. Now, we have members who've raised $128 million in 30 days.
In a company, in a blockchain company, or
Raised it, selling their token.
Okay,
Which
so
means there's no equity, there's no board seat, there's no requirement to tell anybody anything, any investor anything, no rules. They sold a token.
128 million.
$128 million. So, and that's just one. But I'm saying that's an anomaly. That's not every, but there's plenty of companies that have been raising 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 million. There's a lot more than a lot of those out there. But that's changing too, because a lot of that was, the public money. That was just an average person's money. It wasn't, quote unquote, sophisticated or a qualified investor. That was just people thinking, oh, here's a way for me to get rich quick.
Well, one thing I know when we talked to Brian a year ago, Brian was trying to make the comparison that the blockchain world, from a technological point of view, was kind of where the internet was in 94-ish, if I recall. You're saying it's a year ago, 94. And I knew
Where's
Brian
Brian?
back in the Wired magazine days, and we both were tied into Wired. And that was early. This isn't .com froth. That was kind of early. And the money there wasn't flowing. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't flowing big. There was money flowing, but it wasn't anything like the craziness of 99 and 2000. So I'm just wondering, if you had to kind of, any analogy you'd put now, that are we 95, 96? Are we, what kind of money or what kind of thing is happening that might be somewhat analogous?
I'm living through both now. And a lot of people ask, what's the analogy? There was a time, that time has come and gone. That was pretty much last year. And people are a lot more curious, a lot more, I would say, more skeptical about these ICOs. And so that frothiness has pretty much gone away. That happened a lot quicker. Remember, we had a 6, 7, 8 year run in the internet space. It just kept going up, and it kept going until like 2001. And so it's different. So I'm trying to, if there's a year, it's tough because this has happened so quickly. This is crazy. 10 months, we have this kind of membership and this kind of asset. That doesn't even make sense. And I'm living it. I'm doing it. It's mine. It's my company. I'm like, I can't believe it. But I'm not going to turn it down. But I do know the opportunity is there because I think people are buying into that dream and that vision.
Well, we're going to get everyone's opinion here in a little bit about what year are we in, or if there's any analogies. There's 4 areas that we chatted a little bit about before I want to touch on, and we're going to stick this out a little bit for other discussions later and to draw other people in this conversation. There's 4 big issues that you and I were talking about earlier that has to do with all this. There's one, let's say, the regulatory issues. So why don't you just give your quick hit on that, and we're going to draw other people into that shortly. But what are the issues that we're starting to face now in this space around regulation?
Number one, of course, the SEC. Everyone is talking about and concerned about what is the SEC actually going to do. And I think it's clear, at least in our organization, we try to encourage anyone that presents to our members, and our members to only look at really security tokens. So that would require registration and require the same rules as if it was a share of stock. That, to me, that I think is inevitable. So to answer your question directly, I think that's heavy regulation is inevitable.
In the coming year, couple years?
Next week. It can come at any moment.
Okay.
And there's some people in the room, I won't necessarily point out, who would know that definitely, or have a better idea of when that is, when the feds are coming. But definitely regulation of all sorts. So, because, yes, the hype was around criminality, but, folks like us who are in the game, we know, do you know how hard it is to liquidate a Bitcoin? Do you know how hard it is especially massive amounts of it, because you've been selling drugs? I mean, please. That is like such a sideshow, but great media hype. It's relevant, it's important, it has to be dealt with. Just like on the corner of right there, 3rd and Folsom, dealing with the crack that's being sold right now.
Right.
So in cash, in fiat currency. So the idea is this, this crypto is going to now exacerbate or accelerate that. And they found the guy who, ran Silk Road. I mean, they get him. To unleash that kind of on the market, it's not hard, to kind of find that. And that's why certain tokens are coming that are very, that are certainly anonymous or attempt to be, like Monero, Zcash, and some others. But still, there's a lot of work in that area globally to try to pursue that. That's a small part of the market. So there's the criminal stuff, but it's primarily just regulation on how to communicate with investors. If I bought a token, and I feel like this, I really don't have a problem with the regulation, and regulations in general. It's like, yeah, you're taking people's money and you have absolutely no accountability for that. Maybe, we haven't even built anything. We just had you and I got together over beer, and we came up with a white paper and raised $8, $10, $12 million from, an Uber driver and a bunch of others. It's like, that's, to me, is not responsible. That's not good for society. That's not helping the industry at all.
So we're having regulation. Also, international side of that, you mentioned SEC, U.S., but you think?
Very well. It's country by country.
So it's happening all over.
Yeah, and there's interesting things happening. Gibraltar is doing its thing, Switzerland's doing its thing. Now Japan is doing. China, shut it down. But China's always done that. It's like this thing, crypto, currency came along, and people were making lots of money, mining, doing this stuff, and then, they stopped the bus, everybody off, and then they only allowed Chinese nationals to get on, and then it's okay, go ahead. So we'll see what happens there. But there's no consistency around the world. So everyone's trying to play off, where can I go to trade, where can I go to participate, where can I go to purchase stuff?
The business models. another area. To what extent do you think we're starting to get realistic business models that are sustainable, could really warrant kind of
I'd
the
like to know
invested?
his response to that as
We're,
well.
we're gonna
Brian?
we're
Yeah, I
gonna
think-
hear from a lot of folks on that, but just your
business
quick hit,
models?
yeah, where are we in this space? Are there real serious underlying, like, are we really getting to the point where this is starting to really start to scale?
No, we're not.
Okay.
I don't know of one business model that's out there that's really killing it or doing it. I don't know anyone that's profitable. And all I know is about a bunch of launches of different types of chains and how people want to dominate and have their chain and be the winning chain. But I see a lot. What I'm really pleased to see is a lot more serious analysis going in. There are firms, multi-coin capital. There's a bunch of groups out there that are really starting to do analysis of these technologies and really kind of they're starting to get washed out. Some of the weaker ones, let's say. And the ability to go from chain to chain, cross-chain activities or working trading, cross-exchange trading. There's a lot of things coming that are really interesting, but no, there is no successful blockchain business model at this point.
How close are we getting you? I mean, because that's the critical piece, right?
This is all so nascent. This is like, okay, this is internet, this is almost TCP/IP is being introduced.
So we're just starting. Okay.
We're just starting out. So it's a land grab.
Now, I do know there's entrepreneurs out here with some business models that we're going to check in with a little bit here. Social impact. People are really starting to talk about, and it was interesting. I went to one of his gatherings in which the people that were presenting all had these really interesting social impact ideas, and we got a couple of them in here. We're going to shout out in a minute here. But what do you make of that as a set of issues? Is it starting to really get now to not just making money things, but things that really make a difference out there?
Oh, there's unbelievably great projects out there. I'm not convinced yet that they're getting the funding that they need or getting the traction that they need. But I'm really pleased, and I'm glad you came to where literally, normally we have about 4 presenters. And the presenters, I usually have it where it's 2 to 3 are actually for-profit entities, and always the 4th speaker is either an impact investing related or doing something on wellness or health or it can be talking about anything that's not money making related. So I'm trying to create a holistic kind of environment for our members. So the impact folks and the impact movement is phenomenal. There's a lot of stuff going around around the world globally. It's unbelievable what's happening. I mean, for environment, healthcare, and we'll definitely, I mean, there's people in this room that can speak to you about it more directly. But when I step back and when you ask about the financing and the money part of it, which it all is the fuel, is the lifeblood, I'm only seeing that done occasionally. It's almost like, in a lot of cases, this is crowdfunding on steroids, right? If we're talking,
That's
right?
an interesting way to think of it.
And so, yes, there are folks getting that initial chunk of money, but what about the further? They've built the chain, they built what they were doing, they got a couple of I won't say customers, but a couple of programs going or something to support what they're trying to do to prove that it does exist. But where's the rest of that money? Where's the rest of that follow-up capital? And that's where I'm seeing a real lack or miss or something is missing there.
And the final little issue, when we open it up to some other folks here, is technology. Do you feel, I mean, I know you're not coming to this from a technological point of view, but do you feel, what are the issues that we're kind of bumping up against? And then we're going to open it up here in a minute.
The competition, there's so many different protocols out there now that they're just almost distracting. So people are playing on their coins, on the coins that are issued. So I have, there's EOS, there's a variety of different platforms that are coming, protocols, blockchain protocols that are coming, and then they'll issue a token maybe, and then people want to buy that token and speculate on that token and add it to the mix of the other 1,500 or 2,000 or whatever number of tokens there are out there now, and try to make money off of it. But I'm not seeing yet the implementation of blockchain the way the promise has presented itself.
And that is a good time to go to a few people I'm going to call out here. And And I want to go to you, Brian, if you don't mind. Part of the deal here is if you folks, yeah, a couple of folks, why don't you come to the front? Because I think, yeah, and let's get him a mic here. And use the 4 issues we're talking about here, the technology issues. You had talked about it a year ago as where you were and some big missing pieces to figure out. Give us a little update on where you think we are and to what extent the challenges on the tech front right now to kind of figure out some key pieces of the whole blockchain space.
Yeah, there's a lot of technology that's being funded by a lot of these piles of money being amassed, right? Some of that will live on. Some of that will kind of get to a 90th percentile and then be dropped when the next interesting thing comes along. And I worry sometimes that there'll be so much friction actually that we'll see the same great idea implemented 10 times before one that actually gets traction. And maybe that's just the way startup technologies work anyways in early markets, so that's kind of fine. In Hyperledger, in the year since we talked, we've grown to 10 different technologies kind of within our greenhouse. One of them focusing on distributed digital identity. How do we get out of the sense of your profile, your identity being defined by servers at Facebook or at Google, and instead something that's much closer to you that looks like a wallet, to compatibility with Ethereum, to being able to do cross-chain types of transactions. And that work is hard, and it's still ongoing, and it's above the layer of TCP/IP. Fortunately, TCP/IP is still going to be with us, right? Mm-hmm. We get to start with that, but still a lot of groundwork to do. But we're in production now on a couple of the technologies that have come out of Hyperledger are running on production networks that are doing things like tiny little projects like in Japan. The education system, the education department of the government has worked with Sony to build kind of a credentials blockchain to be able to track, okay, who really graduated from where, so that people can't lie on their resumes anymore. A project like that too. There's a banking network in China with about 20 banks trading collateral that the total assets being traded on that network are in the hundreds of billions, with a couple billion a day in flow. And that one project's about half the size of all the rest of the cryptocurrencies put together. So there is this like dark matter of technology projects going on that are people typically not doing ICOs, typically just trying to use these technologies to go and solve some rather prosaic needs. And you're not going to see that show up on CoinMarketCap, if you hit refresh, right? But a lot of good work going on. But like the early days of the web, there's going to be a lot of, remember Java application servers? It seemed like there were 1,000 of these different Java application servers, and eventually, it boiled down to a few, typically open source ones. So I think we're going to see the same things happen. I just kind of wish that the ICO-driven token kinds of stuff ended up encouraging people to collaborate rather than encouraging them to add a 5% little difference and then do their own ICO, right? And kind of fork and fork and fork. Because it's really one of the hardest things to get going in any technology movement, especially in open source, is to get people to put aside what they perceive as their differences and work on common code. So we're still trying to do that.
Can I ask you a question and tying into your opinion too, because you kept trying to get an analogy between the internet early era. I have never seen so much petty attacking of each other's protocols ever before in my life. It's like back in the day, we were, oh, hey, you're doing that, or you want a dog site? Okay, well, go for it. Who cares? It was like, oh, that's wonderful, that's smart. Not this time. People are like, oh, that's a bullshit protocol. That's not really going to work.
It's because the people working on Gopher and HTTP didn't have tokens in their pockets that varied in their value in real time, depending upon the sentiment, of like what was said. And that's got to drive a bit of the that vitriol in the community.
Look at the communities run Ripple. I mean, either you love it or you hate it. It's like, and it's weird. It's like, what's going on out here? I've never seen it before.
But that's interesting. Well, so the people you're dealing with are open source, don't have skin in the game in terms of coin or necessarily.
And some of them do. I mean, you can build tokenized kinds of things on top of the technology stuff that we put out. It just, the technology stacks themselves aren't hardwired to Ethereum or hardwired to any particular token. And I think we will see a universe of lots of tokens, whether it's some that are public, a whole lot that are essentially like frequent flyer miles, and that they're kind of private or around kind of a specific cluster of companies, and some that'll be like a token representing your car, right, or your title to your car, right, or a title to a house, or a title to a diamond, right? I'm not so keen though on the tokenization of everything on the planet. I think there's a lot that still happens that happens in society based on intrinsic value, based on kind of folks working together, and I think we'll find a balance between those.
Final thing is just, in the last year, have you been encouraged by how much has happened in terms of the technology and how much movement's made and how much has been accomplished? Or are you frustrated by more to come? I'm just curious your little quick update on the tech front mostly.
Encouraged in absolute amounts, discouraged in success rates. Like I feel like for the capital raised, we're getting much less out of it than we had in the first few years of the web. In absolute amounts, stuff's in production now, and we're doing the equivalent of taking. Remember, it took forever to take credit card orders like over a SSL connection, right? And to feel confident in like doing that, that took 6-7 years, I'd say, after from '91 when the first browser came out to '98, '99 when people finally were like in the habit of buying things with credit cards online, and that window has shrunk to basically 2 years, right? In the last 2 years, I think. And to businesses putting core business processes on these systems, that's happening now. It's still it's early days, but value has been created. So I'm really happy.
Let's bring Misha. Do you want to? Let's bring Misha up here a second here. These are just folks that I know are doing amazing stuff in the.
Hi, everyone.
Serial entrepreneur. Why don't you just identify yourself? You're in this space now. I'd love to know a little bit about the business model thing and a little bit of the regulation kind of sense of where we're at with both those issues right now.
Okay, so maybe I give a quick background.
Yeah, give a little background.
So I've been in the Valley in San Francisco since 2011. I started mining, I think, in 2012. I'm a big fan of decentralization. I have built systems where basically we try to build decentralized telecommunication system. A lot to do with mesh networking. And in my current company, I'm building a network for connecting objects, IoT devices, using decentralization of the networks by leveraging everyone's smartphones. And so I've been digging through all the different rabbit holes for figuring out how can we leverage the blockchain technology, and on the regulatory side, how can we bring a cryptocurrency that can help us spark this network by incentivizing what we call miners for building this network, because it's a full software infrastructure. So I kind of go back to what David mentioned. I think today, if you are looking to actually do an ICO or raise money using the mechanism, there's no discussion. It's a capital formation. In this case, you are most probably a security, and I think it would be suicidal to do differently and go and raise money in form of an ICO today in the US without applying the right rules. But there are still ways, because for example, Bitcoin is not a security. You have different models where you can mine. So I think there are still ways of how you can avoid the heavy regulatory environment. You can also do things with only people outside of the US. So there are different ways. But if you look at building your company and raising money that way, you definitely are a security. And there is a gray area where, when this token basically who starts to be, by being a security at some point turns into a real utility, I think that's still very gray where we are today. There's no clear path, I think, for that. So I would say to entrepreneurs, if there are entrepreneurs in the room, like just be careful. So.
And do you think the solution for that is going to come through the government regulation, or is there a way to solve? How do you get through that gray area? What do we need to solve that, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
That's a very hard question. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't do lobbying too, but I think it's going to take a very, very long time, because I think there's a huge fracture, and because just the regulators don't understand the technology. And unfortunately, I feel that the pace of technology is going so fast that it's going to take more and more time for regulation to catch up on the pace of where the technology is going.
Interesting. So we got a tech update, a little bit of business model. How about Ben? Is Ben Bartlett here? Ben, why don't you come up here? Here's a social impact example, and we're going to open it up to everybody shortly here. But yeah, maybe if you want to jump up here in the front, that's fine. Ben's the vice mayor of Berkeley here, city councilman. And but why don't you give a little of your background? But he's trying to bring this blockchain into essentially municipal bonds, right? Come over here a little bit, yeah, into the light. Sorry, yeah, go ahead. What you want to explain what you're doing?
Sure, thank you, Peter. So essentially, we're trying to solve for the fact that the Trump budget has kind of eviscerated our ability to fund affordable housing. By lowering the corporate tax rate from 39% to 18%, the tax equity finance market is in jeopardy. And that's what we use to do our duty. And in Berkeley, we have over 1,000 homeless people. And at the same time, we have a larger issue that we're facing the next generation, the zero asset problem. We're supposed to own nothing. No physical assets and no financial assets. So we thought, okay, well, let's use the technology here to issue bonds, municipal bonds, on the blockchain, disintermediate the process, so cut out the middleman. That allows you to lower costs tremendously, and also to offer the bonds to ordinary people. Ordinary bonds cost $5,000 or $100,000, but now we can issue them in increments of $1, $5, $25. And in this way, the community can own an asset tied to a physical asset. So at once you've solved for both problems. So I'm really excited about it. And going further in the crypto world, recognizing that yes, there is the future of currency is already happening, it's already upon us, and that currency is programmable. So you can receive your interest payments from the bonds you own in the form of a local currency, a digital token, a tokenized interest payment. And that token is itself programmable to be used in local stores. It's a communication device, so you can vote on next projects. You can generate tokens by doing acts of goodwill, like volunteering at a homeless shelter, or winning a spelling bee, or anything. Coupons at Pete's, coming to that coupon, 15 cents off. So it's meant to really prove out this idea of a programmable currency that can drive local value and commit some of those public resources to not just physical ownership of the assets in the community, but also drive those resources into the community and prevent this wasteland coming our way next year of closed stores. We all know that 2019 is supposed to be the worst year in store closures in history. And so we have blight affecting communities right now. This is one way to drive business into the community.
And where are you in the process, just to kind of cap that up? So you've introduced that to Berkeley, but it's not, the full council has to
So last week, and I wish you guys could come, it was Tuesday actually this week. It was pretty tremendous. We had our teach-in session. Myself, my panel of experts, we had a PowerPoint on the screen. We taught the council, taught the community about what this project looks like and the benefits and how the future is upon us. And we were well received, and we expect to pass it this Tuesday and be the first community in the world to issue bonds in the blockchain.
Berkeley. Thank you. All right, James. Let's get James. James here is also doing social impact, and then we're going to open it to everyone shortly here. But is Chelsea here? Chelsea Rustrom? I don't see her. Anyhow, James. Yeah, give us a little. Just give us a little sense of what you're doing, but also your social impact side of where you see all the potential here.
Yeah. So I think one of the challenges that this young...
Maybe you should identify yourself a little bit.
Yeah, James Hanusa, Digital Rain, UIX Global, a bunch of other affiliations. I think one of the challenges that this young technology and culture faces is leaders that represent a possible future. And David, I see, is one of those. And there are others, and we've built community around leaders that have a purpose-driven ethos to them in the virtual reality world, in the AI world, and now in the blockchain world. The Lambo crap from the crypto community has to stop. And they got to see real positive leaders that are here doing the real work and are embodying the possibility of what this technology is bringing forth in the world. Activists that have been doing this work for 10 years, speaking of myself, but others that have been doing it for their whole lives, we now have a tool to disintermediate governments, corporations, currencies, and to really create new models. And that can be, I'll give you some examples. So we're working with Startup Society Foundation right now on their summit in DC focused on Puerto Rico, bringing blockchain in, cryptocurrencies in with many of the leaders that have started to move down to Puerto Rico. New food systems, blockchain on the food system, hurricane relief, all kinds of applications, solar, energy, you name it, could disintermediate the whole bond issue and the, what is it, 80, 90 billion in debt that they're facing in Puerto Rico now? Who signed on for that? Where are they now? Move it to cryptocurrency. Forget the fiat. There's all kinds of ways that this can be applied for health, for new governance systems, for new policy, to accelerate the deployment of all of the solutions that are available for new food systems, energy, et cetera. Base of the pyramid, Maslow's base of the pyramid. So I think in the impact world, I love David's answer on this is life. This is not some investment category, you know, or CSR from corporates or whatever. No, this is like taking care of people and creating some new mechanisms for the way we want to live. And there's the hype around it. There's the investment stuff. There's the tech bros. They need to go. This is some serious shit that we can do with this technology. We've been waiting for this for a long fucking time.
All right. Well, thank you. Let's give this to here. All right, let's open this up, David. Now, there's folks that we just were chumming the waters here with folks that we know have strong opinions on all this stuff. But we really want to hear what do you guys, I mean, is there pushback to this stuff? Is there critical pushback? Is there other folks with great success stories, other questions that want to go here? And let's start here with Lena, but also let's see hands if people do want to, there's, okay, a couple of us around here. You stand up, identify yourself, and then
Hello,
say what you want to
everyone.
say.
I'm Lena Konstantinovich, and I'd like to share an example that both illustrates some of the impact questions you were asking, but also how far and how fast things have evolved in the space. So last year in May, I was in Romania. I brought a delegation of clean tech companies there, and I met one of the local entrepreneurs who had built a very successful energy company providing 100% renewable energy mix to their customers when the markets got deregulated there. He was growing so fast, in 18 months he was $1 million in revenue and couldn't keep up, his bank guarantees couldn't keep up with how fast he was growing to purchase energy. And so he was looking for capital because of the dearth of capital in markets like Romania, where the angel investor class really doesn't exist or is evolving. There's very few options. So he was basically being offered to access $500,000 in capital for 60% of his company. And he was at 10 million in revenue that year, or 12 million in revenue. So I share that story because from an impact perspective, it's not just about investing in blockchain companies that have an impact mission, but it opens up access to capital in a way that is currently not available in certain markets. So to fast forward a few months, when I met with them, I said, have you thought about doing an ICO? And they looked at me and said, what's that? It took them about 2 months to research it and figure out that this might be something that they would want to do. And so 2 months later, they came, started to work on it. In January, they raised $30 million in 8 days, were voted the best ICO of the year by Huffington Post, and are now well on their way to accomplish what they've intended to. So that's one example. The interesting thing is that they were the first to build energy trading platform where you could trade the excess energy your rooftop solar produces halfway across the world. There are now 6 or 7 companies in less than a year doing the same thing or some version of that. So just wanted to share a couple of...
But they were also a real company. They had...
Yes, so they were, unlike many ICOs, they were a real company with
Real revenue.
revenue and customers and growing fast. And so the blockchain component was an additional business line for them, and that really complemented what they were already doing.
Awesome story. That's so good.
Before
Give
you
it back.
go on, before you go
Okay.
on.
Okay, go ahead. Did you want to
Yeah,
say
I
about
wanted
that?
to just say something on, because that's another example, and I hope people really heard what you just said. There was a real company that had real revenue, and then it tokenized. That's different than the noise that's been going on in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I don't want people in this room to say, oh yeah, that's how we'll do it. It's like, no, I mean, you have to have a real business. And that's the way the market is moving. And it doesn't mean that the Wall Street boys have moved in. It's just logical. Do you really want to invest in something or own a token or something that has no revenue, no proof in anything, and you're not even sure, the people have never worked together before, and it's a new market? It's like, come on, there's just some basic questions that anyone would ask. You have to ask in this space as well. The other thing, though, that we don't touch on often enough in this kind of a forum is we keep focusing on cryptocurrency as it's one thing for me to take this and tokenize it, right? And you decide to sell it to you, and you decide it's a token, and you pay me $10 for it, and then you maybe somehow, now this token gets listed on an exchange, and you sell it to somebody else, and somebody buys it for $20, or there's or someone buys it from you, and fine, that's a transaction, takes place. It's different if you could buy that token, and take that token, that digital token, and go into a store or a restaurant or paying your bills. Then you're starting to piss off the government. Now you're messing with money. Now you're messing with fiat currency. And you potentially could, that's the real ultimate battle that's coming. And that's global. And that's what everyone, so keep in your mind, this is one thing to do this cryptocurrency trading, and you're trading this currency and that one, fine. If it's speculative, one day it's up. Remember, it's another thing too, is this whole discussion about volatility. How else do you make money unless there's volatility? So this whole idea of trying to introduce stability and all that, that's for the institutional guys. But if you're a trader, you want volatility. So I just want us to have a part of what we try to do is make sure we always elevate the conversation, really understand the scope. Again, no one's asking you to write code here. That's just some basic fundamental thought, how to perceive this. And that's where the regulators are really concerned about. How are you using this? How is this going to someday replace the dollar? That's a national security issue, period. Not kinda, not maybe, ha-ha over dinner. No. That's a conversation at Justice. That's a conversation at the Treasury Department. And they're talking to the ministry in London, and they're talking to the planet, all our allies. Wait a minute, whoa, central banks going away? No. So there's a big battle coming, and that's the battle I want when people are reading articles, I want them to be able to put things in their proper buckets.
Well, that battle, you think they're already thinking that, talking about it.
Oh, yeah. They're not stupid people.
But how do you think that's going to play out?
They're going to lose.
They? Who's they?
Governments are going to lose.
You really think that?
Oh, the technology is faster than they can move. Now, you talk to them, oh no, we'll handle this. We know how to stop this. But administrations change. Look at the current administration. Are they trying to really stop any kind of anything? So, it's a kind of,
Fair enough.
it's really very serious. It's a revolution. And that's a tough thing for many people to get their heads around, where everything changes. Everything. And that's what I believe started at the introduction of the World Wide Web, when it just went from text and just a bunch of universities and DOD sharing data, and professors and academics talking to government folks, to the commercialization of the internet. That's when it all
And now
began.
it's just a continuum from that.
In my opinion, it's just purely an
so
evolution.
it's really the digital revolution's kind of next phase.
Next phase. How could it stay just internet and just how we're just all going to stare at Google, and Google's going to sell our data, or Facebook's going to sell our data, and that's the way it's always going to be from the start? No, of course not. No, it's just a matter of time. Facebook's business model is gone. It's gone.
Why do you say
Yeah.
that?
Google's, because they're making money on your data and mine, my pictures, who do I talk to, my contacts, and they own it forever.
So you
Read
think
the terms of service.
so that's going to
right now.
blockchain. That'll blockchainize. It'll
Well,
become blockchain or something.
It's
or
not
however-
just
what the verb is.
there are technologies that are coming that are built on that technology that they're flipping the business model. Yeah, you can sell my data if I allow you to, and I get a piece of what I get paid for my data now, and I only want this piece of my data. The rest of this is mine.
And that's all in your blockchain
That's
kind of world.
exactly. So that's what's coming. We see it. There are folks out there working on that now, and many different. That's the identity piece. So that's why I was trying to say that, yeah, we can talk about cryptocurrency, but this is life. Every aspect of who you are is going to change. Please understand that. And it already has. It's not like I'm speaking out of, can you imagine life right now without the internet? Most of us in here know CD-ROM and know what it is to get. We don't know records and albums. Now it went to CD-ROMs, and then from CD-ROMs went to no, all that's gone. It's just distributed. It's just
So you think
streaming.
10 years from now, 20
Oh,
years, we'll look back
in
and
12 years. I even think that this word blockchain, and it's part of the organization that we're building here, I don't know if that word's going to be relevant. Do we have is going to the Silicon Valley TCP/IP 10 years ago? I could have called it that. No, no one talks about it. It's a protocol layer. It's baked in. It's the way it will be. That's the revolution, and that's what I'm excited about with automated trust. No more bullshit. No more games. No more explaining how you can get around the rules. No more.
Huh.
That's what I believe can happen.
Seems like these people share this. Good. Well, let's get the guy back here stepping up.
Hey, I'm Garrett Kinsman. It's very interesting that humanity is reaching a consensus. But in terms of the economic aspects, we're seeing this is funding wireless networks. It's funding the city of Berkeley. It may be funding Puerto Rico. But who's to say that this can't fund something like a city on Mars? Where are the moonshots, the tokenized moonshots? And do you think that as we see the market caps reach into the trillions of dollars, we're going to see these starting to fund projects that can never be funded today? Thank you.
Did you?
I will say that someone who works closely with the Silicon Valley Blockchain Society, that is his vision. He is what's called a crypto whale or crypto billionaire, and he can't wait. I mean, his whole vision is to get us to wherever wants to move humanity forward. In his perspective, right? Now, if someone has a different perspective, that's been the problem all along, though, that we all have to be concerned about. It's this, when Jeff Bezos becomes the first trillionaire, which I think he's on track to be in a not too very far period of time from now, absolute power corrupts absolutely. He could be, I don't know, funding dolphins and genes and American U.S. People, human genes merging together or something. It'd be something bizarre. We have to figure out how to manage that. Yeah, there could be a moonshot, but how about a moonshot solving Alzheimer's? Or can we as a society help direct or comment or participate in what that moonshot should be? Or is it left to the individual, which many of my libertarian friends feel it should be, and many of my conservative Republican friends feel it should be? And I'm not getting a discussion of left or right. This is a revolution that's happening, and we're living it. I'm just saying, is that absolutely wrong, or is there a role for society and comment and participation, since we're all impacted by it? The social impact and social questions around this are massive, and we're doing it now. We're doing it now. We're finally having dialogue, and people are leaning in like none of us have ever seen. We all know about the internet, and now look at all of us in this room. And it doesn't matter, and you can have gray hair, and but you want to know what's going on. You have a comment, you want to participate, you want to learn, because this you can learn, and you know you can, because you've already been using the internet for this long. So this is part of the revolution. This is like, wow, people, like I said, 5-10 years ago, people weren't meeting up and talking about this on a regular basis. You're talking to me how you want to have a series on blockchain related. It's never changing in all the impacts.
It's interesting. We have been thinking about that just because there's so many pieces there. I mean, we're just touching on a million things here, folks, but
Exactly.
It's just everything is moving fast. And I've been through a few other fast-moving tech spaces, and This is up in that league, for
This
sure.
is, I've never seen this before.
There's a guy right here who wanted to say something. Go ahead.
My name is Krishna.
Yeah, you look to everybody.
Hi, my name is Krishna. I'm the founder of Agile Entrepreneurs. It's a network of founders of startups who are bootstrapping. And our mission is to help entrepreneurs succeed on their own terms, with or without funding, without being dependent on external funding. So we've been doing it for about 12 years. Now we've been looking at having our own co-working space to kind of help them collaborate. And there's a structure around that. And I've been thinking about what you said. I've been looking into this whole token thing. We don't want to be dependent on investors and their fickleness. So how do you see any, what do you see about, I'm hearing about the token and the social mission you're talking about. Even the investors I've been talking to, I'm telling them we are not giving equity. This is all about helping the entrepreneur succeed. So I see a possibility with the tokenization of entrepreneurs contributing to their own success.
I think there's, yes.
Yeah, that's the question.
I think it's unlimited, the number of ideas. The issue again is what I still tie in. It's crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And let's say you raise a chunk of cash. How long is that going to last? And then where's the next round coming from? Where's that extra additional cash? That's the long-term view in planning for your organization. And that's why still, honestly, I see that as a problem for most impact-related nonprofit entities. Yes, wow, we raised $300,000. Everyone here knows how far can $300,000 really go. You got a couple people and you're paying them, you're paying rent, you're paying all that. It just goes but so far. So it's a challenge.
Can I just add one thing? We are a co-working space business model, so it's a cash flow machine. The only challenge we have is the initial seed capital to get the first co-working space up and running, and then it will start making money, and it's a chain. So we're not greedy, we're not looking to
Are you up and running now?
We have done it in kind of loose ways. We are in the process of closing a deal to have a co-working space up and running.
And then you'll have revenue?
It will make cash and profit.
No, and when it generates revenue, I don't know about profit. I just want to ask about revenue.
Revenue and profit.
If you're generating revenue,
Yes.
somebody somewhere will be interested.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it. Hey, I just want to ask a little question here before we go to last couple of questions, because we're getting to the end game here a little bit. How many people share the feeling, and there's a lot of smart folks in this room, that there's a revolutionary piece to this blockchain that really is something, oh my God, it's like almost unanimous there. How many people have doubts, just healthy doubts? Doesn't have to be, okay, there are folks with healthy doubts on what's going on. All right, does anyone with a healthy doubt want to just, because I was going to think of phrasing a question here, but is there anyone who feels confident in wanting to just at least, okay, let's get this guy in the back here. Just give us a sense of, just say who you are and just give us a sense of what you're worried about or thinking about.
So my name is Greg Ellen. I've had the opportunity to work in civic tech, work in the federal government, work at the early days of the internet. I think one of the interesting things about where we are with the web right now is that in our lifetimes, we're getting to live through a radical democratization of many items that previously had barriers to entry. And we're getting to see the optimism about what that democratization would enable and the faith that it would bring out the best in humankind. And the reality of what we're seeing now, of what people have done with that democratization, and the greatest threats that people are worrying about can be traced back to the democratization of weapons, the democratization of genetics engineering, the democratization of people being able to collaborate together, especially in politics. There's a court case going on right now before the Supreme Court regarding a baker who didn't want to sell the cake to a gay couple, right? I am amazed that the potential to embed inside of a permanent record agreements and rules and other things When we talk about destroying a fiat currency, we are democratizing currencies and methods of transactions among very small groups of individuals. And so there are significant, so we are already witnessing the significant consequences of democratization and the removal of friction. And so that's where the skepticism comes from.
You haven't said it exactly, but are you talking about, let's say, the last political cycle and how things kind of went
Well, I don't
off the
think you have to
rails a little
go
bit?
just to the political cycle, but I think that's clear. But I think email was great. Email was fabulous because it removed the friction of sending a message. And what it did was remove the friction and cost of sending a message.
So now,
And so now we're inundated with messages. and so you can look at that, but then you can just repeat this pattern. And I think, it was really interesting. I remember many years ago, Dana Boyd's early work, where she was saying, oh my gosh, there are anorexic support groups that are popping up in AOL and Facebook. And these support groups were not about getting over your anorexia. They were about supporting you having anorexia. And now we're seeing that, and we're seeing that ramp up. So you can look at this, you can look at spam, you can look at these community groups, and then you can map it to what's happening in the divisiveness of politics today, and trace it to the ability for people to go tribal because they have the means to support those tribal communities in a way that they have not had before because of the necessity of relying on the larger group.
fascinating. And then you're applying it to blockchain is another
No,
decentralizing technology. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
We just got a
I
few more
agree
minutes
with
here.
that analysis. I'm sorry, that gentleman's name? Well, in any event, your name? I'm sorry. Greg. Hi, Greg, David. I agree with your analysis completely. But I can't believe I'm about to say this. I'm an optimist in the sense that,
You can't believe
and not that you're a pessimist, or that your argument is. What I'm saying that I want to respond that I've come to the conclusion. I was like, initially like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking that feared AI and that unchecked, and even Bill Gates. And then I talked to a whole bunch of people about it who are in the space. And I came to the conclusion that, again, our foibles are fundamentally illogical. And I believe in math and science, unlike maybe our current administration and some folks who support them, but I believe in math and science. And I am optimistic that the technology, yes, initially there are biases baked in, and it's causing that decentralization is going to help those biases for a while. But I think there's an opportunity that AI, with the embedded technologies, remember, this is just a protocol to make sure things are tracked and they actually are secure, and opposed to other things. But it's going to ultimately be AI and the role of VR eventually in AR. But I think there's an opportunity that maybe intelligence will not allow that certain things to happen.
Oh, give him the thing.
Yeah.
One of the first things that's going to happen when the ability to buy bonds for a few dollars comes around, that half the people that are currently having their money put inside of a managed retirement fund are going to rip that money out of it because they don't trust the government people.
Yes, I was one of them.
I mean,
yeah,
right?
I know,
That is that.
I saw that with the different kinds of plans. There's the literally manage you can manage it yourself, a certain percentage, or you give it to the professionals. Even though there's a great track record, this is all they do 24 hours a day, and here you are as the secretary at DMV, and now you want to rip it out because I want to control my money. I got it. I didn't say it was going to be smooth. I don't remember. I don't think agrarian to industrial revolution was smooth. I don't think industrial to
so
information age was smooth.
there's
I
a-
think people lost their jobs by the thousands. I think there's a whole lot of mess that took. But I believe that. But I also see. In my life. When I step back, and I say what's inevitable, and I believe what I think is happening is inevitable now. I'm trying to get on the right side and help create policy and have these discussions to help us think about those issues and how to deal with those issues.
Oh my gosh. Okay, guys. We are coming up against, this is a live stream, and we kind of have a format of about a 90-minute format here. And also, I don't want to keep anyone too far from the drinks and from what's going on here. The next round of food that comes out. So I don't know if we can accommodate all the hands up here that really want to do it. But the beauty of the evening here is that we don't have to go home. We got we got food, we got drink, we got time, you got people here, and this is a really, really fascinating conversation. And I think if we just started to get, I mean, there's literally, I saw 10, 12 hands just go up here. I think the best thing we're going to have to just do is have this conversation with each other, and we're just going to have to say this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of a conversation. It's been an interesting conversation here over the course of a lot of rough and crazy terrain, but. Let's just keep the conversation going, but let's all go to the bar to do it. Okay?
Good
Thank
idea.
you.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry about that, and there's even a guy who has the mic here. But let's give David one big hand here, and I want to say, there's a couple really awesome ones coming up here in May and June that we'll reveal to you shortly. And one's going to be Julie Hanna, who's kind of the executive chairman of Kiva, an awesome entrepreneur in her own right. She's going to be coming up with the next one. And then there's a secret one that's coming up here in June. We'll mention to you guys a little bit later. So stay tuned, stay around, stay connected, and bring interesting characters into this network. And let's have some fun. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. It was great. Thank you.